After his shoes were stolen off the porch, one man made an unsettling discovery. Though 2020 has seen its share of unbelievable events, in late July, one city was captivated by a strange situation on a smaller scale. The case of the missing shoes swept the local news and triggered a discovery of a network of rogue shoe thieves with covert rings operating around the world. But how and why did the shoes go missing? The people were determined to find out. Meet Christian. As coronavirus quarantine restrictions lifted, Christian Mayer bought himself a brand new, high-end pair of sneakers. As a psychologist and mental well-being coach, he understood the importance of exercise, and he was more than ready to get back out and hit the ground running. The weather was nice in his quiet neighborhood of Zehlendorf, Berlin, and the streets were thick with trees. It almost didn't feel like a city at all. Rather, it felt like a small, rural community, a place where Christian felt safe leaving his belongings on the porch overnight. For a short while, all was well. The sun was shining, his daily runs were invigorating, and life seemed to be going great. However, Christian's joy would be short-lived. One morning, he went out to his porch and got a bad surprise. One of his very expensive new sneakers, which he'd left by the door, was missing. Confused, Christian looked around to see if it had fallen off the porch, or if he'd kicked it into the bush by mistake. But the shoe was nowhere to be found. Luckily, Christian was close with his neighbors, and so he began asking around to find out if they'd seen anything. Perhaps a young prankster had come up and collected his single shoe, but nobody had witnessed the crime. They did have similar stories to share, though. Some neighbors also complained that they'd discovered missing shoes recently, but until Christian called attention to it, they'd chalked it up to their own absent-mindedness. Now, a mystery was beginning to form. With multiple reports of missing shoes, Christian couldn't help but to investigate further. A few days went by and he waited to see if more shoes disappeared, but none did. At least, none yet. Then, one evening, he heard a rustling outdoors. He looked out and caught a glimpse of a young fox trotting by the house with 2 blue flip-flops in its mouth. Though the creature soon vanished, Christian quickly formed a plan. The next time he saw the fox, he'd follow it and hopefully find his lost shoe. This was a commitment that was easy to make in his head, but following through would prove difficult. A few days later, the golden opportunity arrived. There was a fox, cheekily trotting through his yard like he'd done nothing wrong. Christian slipped on a pair of non-fancy shoes and hurried out the door, being careful not to startle the fox. It darted into a nearby thicket, and Christian pursued. The woodsy environment he'd come to love in Zehlendorf now proved to be the bane of his pursuit. Sticks and brambles caught his clothes, and leaves got into his hair. He had followed the fox through the dense underbrush for nearly an hour and was almost ready to give up when the animal slowed down near a divot in the ground. As Christian drew closer, he realized what it was: the fox's den. While the fox hid, he crept up and took a peek, and couldn't believe his eyes. The den was full of shoes, almost 100 of them, and hardly any 2 were a match. Strangely enough, the fox seemed to prefer Crocs, and nearly every color of Croc was represented. Christian retrieved the shoes in bundles and brought them into a clearing. After he laid them out, he contacted the neighbors, who'd told him of their similar problem, and they were able to identify and retrieve their lost souls. Sadly, Christian's missing fancy sneaker was not among those found, but there could be other fox thieves nearby. The town of Foren in western Germany had a similar problem in which a mother fox stole 120 shoes in a single night for her cubs to play with. A writer in London who was particularly frustrated with foxes in his garden woke up one morning to find 7 mismatched shoes placed neatly in the middle of his lawn. Similarly, a woman in Melbourne caught video footage of a fox stealing 3 boots off her porch. In an even cleverer heist, a Japanese pair of foxes with a taste for sandals was discovered working as a team to steal over 40 pairs. It took 5 Kyoto police officers to surround the duo and rein them in before the spoils could be returned to their rightful owners. Why have the sly creatures done this? It seems that, like dogs, they like to chew on shoes, and most of the footwear Christian found had been mildly gnawed. Crocs seemed like they had a good, springy texture for chewing. Fox cubs go through teething phases, and it's likely that the shoes help alleviate discomfort as the young animal's sharp incisors are growing. Regardless of the reason, you can avoid a similar fate for your shoes by just storing them indoors. We're not sure how foxes discovered that shoes were nice to chew on, but they've been known to play with dogs, who might be the worst shoe chewers of all. Don't get mad at these furry red goofballs, though. They're just chewing away some stress from a major threat to their existence.